皆様こんにちは。
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We'd like to thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today. We're very pleased to see such a large turnout. This is a conference sponsored by the Global Energy Interconnection Development and Cooperation Organization, GEIDCO, and REI, Renewable Energy Institute. And the title is Renewables in an Interconnected Energy System. I'll be serving as your MC today. I am from the REI. I am a research fellow. My name is Akudo. We have put in your hands today's program and questionnaires. As for the CVs of the speakers, it's inside your program. So we will not introduce them orally during the program. And let us just inform you that the GEIDCO presentation will be made by Dr. Hwan Kun rather than Dr. Lin Hong Yu. So we'd like to proceed with the items on the program. We have Chair of the Executive Board of the REI, Professor Thomas Corberier, who will be greeting you and who will be delivering a keynote speech. The speech is entitled The Transmission Grid for Mutual Support with Renewable Electricity. So over to you, sir, Professor Corberier.
Thank you very much, Kudo-san. Thank you to GEIDCO for co-hosting this event. And thank you all for coming. This is a topic of great importance for the development of Japan, and I'm glad that so many of you did choose to come here this afternoon. Electricity grids have always been good to enlarge. With a bigger electricity grid, power plants can operate more steadily, not having to adjust to individual customers' variation in electricity consumption. For the consumer, extended grids are good because they have greater number of power plants to choose from or to start operating or increase operation on when they need more power, thereby making possible cheaper electricity generation and lower cost to all the customers. The extension of transmission grids has become easier as technology for electricity transmission has been improved. We have seen a development driven by China in the last few decades, where their need to transport electricity from resource-rich western parts of China to the consumers in eastern China has led them to increase the voltage roughly from 0.5 megavolt to 1 megavolt, and also increasing the transmission capacity of individual power lines or corridors from roughly 1 gigawatt to 10 gigawatt. And by increasing the voltage, losses has been decreased and therefore the costs of transporting electricity. At the same time, we have, especially in Europe, developed subsea cables that are now being built and installed for distances up to 600 kilometers underwater. This makes it possible also for islands to be interconnected to neighboring countries, enlarging the power systems and reducing the costs of power generation. Another very important development in the last decade is the decreased cost of renewable electricity generation. One of the internationally ambitious companies trying to assess how costs of different sources of electricity in the US are decreasing are Lazard. Bloomberg is another, they will speak later. But Lazard has made this nice diagram showing the dramatic development in the last 10 years. In 2010, solar electricity and wind electricity were the two most expensive sources of electricity in their report. And now, 2019, solar and wind are the lowest cost new electricity that you can get. And this applies in most countries of the world. Possibly not in Japan at the moment because of a lot of homemade institutional barriers to solar and wind. But I think they will disappear, and solar and wind will be cheapest here too. With a lot of solar and wind in the electricity system, the value of transmission capacity increase even further, because solar and wind do depend for their generation on the weather. And if a lot of countries have a lot of solar and wind, it's very good if they can help each other. Countries where there is a lot of solar and wind at the moment can export to those where at that very moment there is less solar and wind electricity available. And then some hours, days or weeks later, when it's the other way around, the countries who previously imported electricity are able to export back to those that supported them sometime earlier. This is a cooperation for mutual benefit, making it possible to increase the utilization of the low-cost renewables in a way that's also strengthening the cooperation between the different regions or countries involved. Today we will hear of a lot about both these developments. We will hear about the renewable electricity deployments in Asia. We will hear about the grid development, and I hope this will make us all more interested in seeing this development accelerate. There is an enormous potential for economic benefit in terms of reduced cost for electricity supply, at the same time as this development can reduce the risks and environmental costs of conventional, traditional, more expensive, more environmentally risky electricity generation. So again, thank you very much for being here and paying attention to these new opportunities, and let's hope that the information provided during this afternoon can help us contribute to speed up this development, making low-cost renewable electricity available to a greater number of people in this part of the world. Thank you, GEIDCO. Thank you all for being here, and I hand the floor over to our Master of Ceremony. Thank you.
ありがとうございました。
Thank you, Professor Koperia. We will have three eminent speakers who will speak in this session. First speaker is from Bloomberg NEF, Ms. Miho Kurosaki, Head of Japan and Korea Research. In Japan, how renewable energy is expanding, that will be the topic of the speech by Ms. Kurosaki.
黒崎様、よろしくお願いいたします。
Ms. Kurosaki, please begin.
皆さんこんにちは。
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak today. I'm from Bloomberg NEF. I'm serving as head of Japan and Korea research. My name is Miho Kurosaki. I was given 15 minutes to discuss how much there will be expansion of in Japan of renewable energy and what phenomena will occur in the market as renewable energy expands. First, about Bloomberg NEF, you may not be familiar with the organization. Yesterday morning on NHK, Mr. Michael Bloomberg candidacy in the presidential election was reported in the news. Michael Bloomberg is the CEO of Bloomberg, and within Bloomberg, I belong to Energy Research Section that conducts research on energy and transportation. We have 5 sectors mainly, and one of the 5 is clean energy. And what is closely related to this is battery. And for battery, commodity and the next generation transportation are also important, so I cover these areas as well. Digital industry, digitalization also affects electricity, and advanced materials including bioplastic and circular economy are also topics under which I conduct research I cover globally. And earlier, Thomas discussed the generation cost. A graph was shown, and he mentioned that Bloomberg will discuss this later. Globally, we are also researching the cost of power generation. So I would like to share with you the results of our research as well. First, about the cost of PV. This is the module cost, and what is shown in blue or purple is what we conducted a survey about since the establishment of Bloomberg NEF in 2004. And this is declining. Price is coming down. When production is twice as large, 28.5% was the reduction in price. And every year, the curve is becoming steeper, and price is constantly coming down. This is not only true for modules, but for capex as well. It will go down to by 34% towards 2025. And as for wind turbine price itself for each different market is shown in different color. And in each market, the price of turbine itself is coming down. Turbine is becoming larger in size in order to increase capacity. In case of solar PV, it is module, and in case of wind, the turbine price is coming down, and also turbines are becoming larger in size, and that is reducing the cost of power generation, or LCOE. Levelized cost of electricity. And by different source of energy, this is shown, LCOE shown. This is for the first half of this year in the United States. In the United States, because of shale gas is inexpensive. There is a notion that gas is very inexpensive, but since last year, wind is even cheaper than gas. And this year, PV is also cheaper than gas. Even with a shale gas boom in the United States, wind and solar are more cheaper than gas. As for coal and oil, on a new build basis, economically, they are no longer competitive in comparison to wind and PV. 5 years ago, which source of energy was cheapest? This is shown by color in world map. Black is coal, and bluish color is also visible. Blue is wind, onshore wind, and 5 years since then, this year, in most of the market, it has changed to blue and yellow. And in Japan, however, still the color it hasn't changed from 5 years ago. And when will the color change? This is LCOE for Japan up to 2050. This is the forecast. Black is coal, and if you look to the left, it was the cheapest source of electricity, and yellow is PV and blue is wind, and before 2025, a tipping point will occur where the lines cross. And when new plant is built, which electricity source is cheapest? By 2024, solar and wind will become cheapest. As for existing plants, even by removing existing plants, is it still economical to introduce renewables? A marginal cost is compared against a fossil fuel, and the line at the bottom is coal, and there is still some distance. That is the current status of Japan, and there are some assumptions used in this analysis. This assumes that current policies will continue, and the current policy being that there will not be a carbon pricing or carbon tax. So if a current policy continues, coal is the cheapest source of energy, but if policy changes, then economics will also change. Based on this forecast, by 2050, when there is a new demand, the cheapest source of energy will satisfy the demand. Based on that assumption, long-term energy outlook is estimated. This is the result for Japan. Yellow is PV and capacity base. There will be increase. And for wind, in 2030s, there will be much rapid growth in terms of the volume of electricity supplied. As you can see readily, the black part still accounts for a large share, which means that coal accounts for a large share. 9 gigawatt is still under construction, and by 2024 they will come on stream. So coal will still increase its share. What is noteworthy is that because of that, gas, the gray part, will decline in percentage, and then it will pick up again later. As for renewable energy, pink line indicates the overall share of renewable energy in the total energy supply. 78% is the estimated percentage for 2050. There's yellow, pale yellow, and dark yellow, rooftop PV and outdoor PV, 32% with the two combined. And as for onshore wind and offshore wind increases more than the darker blue shade onshore wind. If these are put together, it will be 78%. So variable renewable energy will account for about 64%. And what is noteworthy is that the amount of renewable energy is increasing, but not only that. Rooftop PV economically will also change. By word of mouth, it will increase. Consumers' purchases will increase. Not only because of economics, but if a neighbor has a solar panel on the rooftop, then one might feel envious and might install a solar panel as well. And since last year, we have been experiencing blackout due to typhoon and other violent weather. In order to increase resiliency, PV may be introduced by households. And batteries, I will come back to that later, but that may be a driver. The weather, adverse weather may be a driver to introduce solar panel and batteries. And by 2021, what will be the Japan's position? By 2050, Japan will be one of the countries where there will be distributed power generation, according to our forecast. And distributed power generation or centralized. If you compare the two, the growth will come more from distributed power generation. By 2050, 150 gigawatt will be the increase contributed to by distributed power. This includes PV and small batteries that is used in association with PV. If this much renewable energy comes into the market, balancing and curtailment will become concerns. Oftentimes people use the word concern about curtailment and flexibility. In any way, response is necessary when variable renewables come in. The purple part is variable renewables. When we have such a variable source of electricity, balancing will be necessary, and there are several technologies to balance. And one is battery. Every year, we conduct a survey of the price of the package of lithium-ion battery. This is not a cost, but the manufacturers of lithium-ion battery and buyers, such as EV manufacturers and ESS manufacturers, electricity storage system The transaction price is being surveyed, and we will have new survey result out next week or the week after next. But every year it's coming down by about 20%, and we expect this to continue, declining trend to continue. But in Japan, how much cheaper is this going to be? There's a question mark. There's much uncertainty, but even if we exclude uncertainty about Japanese market, how much balancing capability is there in Japanese market? Pumped hydro is working as a balancer in Japan. There's about 27 gigawatt of pumped hydro, and it's close to 30 gigawatt. It will approach 30 gigawatt eventually, and because of this, lithium-ion batteries are not going to be introduced in substantial volume on the grid side. That is our estimate. However, renewable energy and distributed power generation will be the future, so there will be some different geographical characteristics. What I am showing you is a national trend, but for example, if we think about curtailment, what is most important is dispatcher, priority dispatching, and dispatch order. Nuclear and hydro are given priority in dispatch. And in terms of low cost of electricity generation, the dispatch prioritizes nuclear and hydro. But how much nuclear power generation is actively used, that we have to look at the current status. The plant that is resuming operation in nuclear sector, then curtailment will increase if there are more active nuclear power plants. And in how many regions can the power be sent? This is the grid issue. For example, Kyushu and Tohoku are highlighted in purple. In these two regions, the biggest differences are that in Tohoku, they are able to send electricity to TEPCO with a fatter pipe. But Kyushu is connected only to Chugoku region. So the pipe connecting Kyushu and Chugoku is thinner. And lastly, as I mentioned earlier, there are geographical differences. Transmission line and distribution line characteristics are also different. So we have to focus on these as well. And another point is how consumers are responding and how they are changing behaviors. This is a certain day in 2018, according to our model. And a certain day in 2050, from the same second quarter of the year. What is characteristic is that, of course, solar power will be generating during the daytime. So during the daytime, solar is increasing. And pink part is electricity charging and discharging through battery. And what I paid attention to is consumption pattern. At the top of this graph, there's a peak at noon, and there's also another peak at night. But in 2050, there is solar energy. Solar is cheaper, so during the daytime, there will be incentive to consume more during the daytime. So consumption pattern will also change. How consumers will adapt will also have to be estimated when we think about curtailment and grid issues. And lastly, about renewable energy and balancing power and curtailment, when we think about these topics, what becomes most important is market design, the design of the market. And reforms are still underway. And as a result, renewable energy, battery, and balancing, will they be able to fulfill their roles or not will be determined by the ultimate market design. Base load market and the capacity market are included in this chart. And each of these elements, depending on how they are designed, will affect how much renewable energy will be used. For example, balancing power, supplier, for those that supply balancing power, this will be the most important factor. And in Japan, balancing market and the rest of the market will have to be designed. But we can learn from overseas examples. And this is a study from our company in 5 major markets, how balancing power is used and how much renewable energy is used and how much resiliency exists and how much flexibility there is shown. Sorry, this is a very busy chart, but there are strengths and weaknesses of each market, and that the analysis shows the strengths and weaknesses of each region. We should learn from these examples as we design the market in Japan. That briefly was the development of renewable energy in Japan and future issues, including curtailment and balancing market, and the importance of market design. Thank you very much for your kind patience.
黒崎様、ありがとう。
Ms. Kurosaki, thank you so much. Next, may I invite Dr. Huang Kun from Global Energy Interconnection Development and Cooperation Organization GEIDCO, Senior Economist, Deputy Division Director, Corporation Bureau. Dr. Huang Kun, the floor is yours.
本日は
Doctor will be talking about Global Energy Interconnection Initiative and the Renewable expansion in China. Dr. Huang Kun, the floor is yours.
Afternoon, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure and honor to be here to share with you some views from GEIDCO. I'm from GEIDCO Global Energy Interconnection Cooperation Development Organization. Today, I will focus on some of the GEI initiative and also the renewable expansion in China. There are 3 sessions for my today's presentation. In the first session, I would like to briefly introduce the Global Energy Interconnection Initiative and our organization, some information. And also, the second one, I would like to introduce the renewable expansion in China, because in the recent years, the renewable expansion in China has received much attention from the world. And thirdly, I will discuss the power grid interconnection in Northeast Asia and some progress we have already made. When we talk about the GEI initiative, we need to talk about first why we need to have this initiative. That's the rationale of GEI. Actually, the GEI initiative was proposed based on looking for solutions to dealing with the energy challenges. The major challenges we are facing involve the resource shortage, climate change, environment pollution, and energy poverty. As we all know, the fossil fuel energy will run out in 50 to 100 years, and the carbon dioxide emissions generated by fossil fuel have caused the severe air pollution. The temperature rise will influence the ecological system of human man in the world. And also, the energy poverty will also restrict the economic and social development. For example, in many countries, still there is no access to electricity in South Asia and some Africa area. So, these challenges require us to find ways to change the energy development path and model. We propose the clean replacements, electricity placements, and one increase and one restore. That clean replacement means replacing fossil fuel with clean energy in exploitation. And electricity replacement means replacing fossil energy with electricity in final consumption. And one increase means increasing electrification level, which is the proportion of electricity in final energy consumption. And one restore, restoring fossil resources to its basic attribute as industrial raw material to provide more value for economic and social development. So the concept of GEI, the GEI is not coming out at one night. It's divided based on some practices, including ultra-high voltage and smart grid technology developed in China recent years. We know the adequate clean energy resources in the world, the potential of global clean energy exceeds 100 trillion kilowatts. And ultra-high voltage transmission technology is advanced and mature, because in China now we have already built up 22 ultra-high voltage projects and currently building 9 new projects. The technology of clean power generation continues to improve, and also smart grid technology is widely used. So the core continuation of GEI is a model energy system dominated by clean energy and centered on electricity that is globally interconnected, jointly constructed, and mutually beneficial to all. The essence of GEI is smart grid, ultra-high voltage, clean energy. Here we talk about smart grid means that more interactive, flexible, and efficient. And the ultra-high voltage grid means important for interconnection and the long-distance transmission and the large-scale allocation. For example, if we transmit the electricity from Africa to Europe or in Asia countries. And also clean energy here, we mean the clean generation, clean transmission, and clean utilization. So the two replacements, actually, I already mentioned before about the replacing clean replacement, electricity replacement, and one increase and one restore. About GEIDCO, so when we had the GEI initiative, in order to promote the implementation of the GEI, the State Grid Corporation of China, SGCC, initiated the organization established of GEIDCO in March 2016. GEIDCO is an international organization based in Beijing, but is composed of voluntary enterprise organizations, institutions, and individuals that all committed to promoting the sustainable development of the world's energy, like Renewable Energy Institute and SoftBank. We all work together to promote the GEI and the clean energy development. I mentioned to promote the construction of GEI to meet global power needs in a clean and green way, to promote the United Nations Energy for All and climate change goals, and to serve the sustainable development of human society. So right now, the organization we have the headquarters in Beijing, and we also have 8 overseas branches, like in Japan, North America, Latin America, Southeast Asia, Central Asia, Europe, North Africa, and Africa. After 3 years development with the increasing spread of the GEI and increasing influence of GEIDCO, now the scale of the membership network has expanded rapidly. In November, by now, actually, the total number of members reached 756, covering 106 countries around the world. So it's really amazing because this number almost 10 times compared to the number when we firstly established in 2016. Just 3 years, we have developed 10 times. So over past 3 years, with the support of all members across the world, GEIDCO has made significant achievements in various aspects, such as exchange and communication, international cooperation, research and planning, and practical actions. When we talk about practical action, it means we promote some projects, especially interconnection projects, to promote the GEI initiative to become the. Okay. That's the first session. I briefly introduced the GEI initiative and the organization. The second part of my presentation is the renewable expansion in China. I will mainly discuss the characteristics of renewable development in China right now. In recent years, clean and low carbon development has been widely agreed and shared by the Chinese government and the Chinese society. Green water and green mountain is our important wealth. There are 4 significant and important achievements in energy development. First, energy production and consumption has increased rapidly. That means, on the one hand, the production capability has improved rapidly and significantly. On the other hand, the economic and social development have driven the great demand for the energy consumption. The energy structure has improved. Clean energy production has grown up very quickly. And in the future, the green energy will become the dominant energy resource. Technology innovation has driven the cost reduction in PV and the wind power generation, also the smart grid, both in transmission and distribution system. Market mechanism has already has already been used to play more important role in allocating and exchanging energy. So energy production in China in 2018, with continuous efforts in energy, especially clean energy development. By the end of 2018, the electricity generation installation has achieved 1,900 gigawatt. That's the #1 in the world. And our generation, renewable installation, and wind power and solar power installation, all these numbers have become the #1 in the world. So it was really difficult to expect actually a couple of years ago. And the clean energy, including natural gas, hydropower, nuclear, wind power, consumption has accounted for 22% in the primary energy consumption. The non-fossil fuel accounted for 14% from 2013 to 2018. 7% increase has apparently improved and optimized the energy consumption structure. More specifically, when we compare the more specific data in the energy consumption structure, it's clearly displayed that wind and the solar power are the major driving forces for the growth in the renewable energy consumption. Let's say, although it's not a big increase, but you can see the trend and why the renewable energy has grown up so quickly in China. So wind and solar power play an important role. And the renewable is mainly used to generate electricity, of course. The thermal power has reduced to 60% in 2018, while the renewable energy electricity installation has reached almost 40%, actually 38% specifically. In the renewable energy, it's clearly the hydropower has accounted for the largest proportion. It's almost 10% in the primary energy production. However, from this chart, you can see the growth rate of hydropower is not as high as 5 years ago. So that means the proportion is quite large, but the growth rate is actually decreasing. However, the wind power generation has grown up very quickly. The growth rate is about 20% in the last 3 years. From this graph, you can see. The wind power has become the third major energy resource just after thermal and hydro in China. One reason is related to the production in northwest wind-based development. The other is the rapid development of the offshore wind power in the eastern coastal area. Over the last 2 years, China's offshore wind power has experienced from 0 to #3 in the world, just behind the UK and Germany. The growth rate of solar power has reached 75% and 50% in 2018 and 2019, respectively. It's clearly to say the growth rate of solar power is at the top level in the renewable energy. So solar power really grow up very quickly, and the growth rate is quite high, over 50%. I would like to show you the power flow in China in 2018. The North Channel, so this map show you the 3 channels to transmit renewable electricity. The North Channel transmits the wind power from the northwest province to Henan, Jiangsu, Hunan province. The Middle Channel transmits hydropower from Sichuan province to Guangdong province. The South Channel transmits hydropower from Yunnan province to Guangdong province and Guangxi province. So this is the power flow in 2018. Why we have such growth up and fast development in China in recent years? Because there are major driving forces coming from the policy driving forces and the technology. First, the policy driving forces. The significant renewable energy expansion are mainly driven by policy and technology factors. For the policy, the 13th five-year plan for renewable energy development and energy production and the consumption strategy 2016 to 2030 have built up the big picture for the clean energy development. Sorry. And also, we have already initiated a market mechanism in renewable energy. The green certificate exchange has already been used in China since last year. And also projects. Chinese government motivate solar and wind power generation parity projects from the year before. And also investment monitoring in wind power projects to make sure the balance between demand and supply. So we also have the technology innovation. For example, in storage technology, fuel cell, and flexible DC, and VR and AR applied in power grid dispatch and management. The last part, I will talk about the power grid interconnection in Northeast Asia. I will briefly go through it because afterwards we will discuss it in detail in the panel discussion. So we know in this area, the energy have the clear complementary between Korea, China, and Japan. And also the cost in this area has decreased rapidly. And so in this area, we try to accelerating the clean energy utilization and ensure the regional energy security. And we also use this framework to develop how to promote and practice the projects. And this is the 3 wings and 1 lie across the international channels in Northeast Asia. So now we have already started to promote some projects like from Weihai to Incheon, from Gaozen to Masu, and from Mongolia, some cities to China and nearby countries. So we need to keep moving on to cooperate, jointly promote planning coordination and promote technical innovation, and promote project implementation and mechanism construction. So we would like to ask all your help, and we would like to cooperate and share with you together to exchange our idea, to work together, to try our best together to find a better solution for the energy transition to make the future better. Thank you.
ファン様ありがとうございました。
Thank you so much.
Next, we have Senior Manager of the Power System Planning Department of Korea Electric Power Corporation, KEPCO, Mr. Ji Young-yang. Mr. Ji Young-yang will be speaking about energy transition and interconnection policies and current progress. So over to you, sir, Mr. Young.
Konnichiwa. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ji Young-yang from KEPCO in Korea. I'm working for the Supergrid project in KEPCO. Today, I would like to introduce the policies and progress of energy transition and interconnection in Korea. The global trend in energy transition is a sustainable development environment for the future generation. These are expansion of renewable energy and its efficiency improvement and sustainable resources and distributed power source and prosumer activation. Korean government has on energy policies following this trend. Power-related energy policy in Korea has a master plan which is established every 5 years and a basic plan which is established every 2 years. In June this year, the third master plan for 2040 was announced. The plan includes increasing the share of renewable energy generation to 30 to 35% by 2040, and power grid interconnection to diversify energy supply. In 2017, the 8th basic plan was announced. The 8th plan includes plans to increase the share of renewable energy generation to 20% by 2030. And two remarkable poles of these policies are reducing nuclear and coal power and increasing renewable energy and LNG power. For this ambitious goal, more than 48 gigawatts of renewable energy facilities shall be equipped. The government plans to transform the structure of renewable energy from combustion-based energy to eco-friendly energy and implement large-scale projects considering the acceptability of local residents. It's a kind of tough goals, but KEPCO will definitely do its best by any means. The 8th basic plan also shows supergrid. In order to develop and use clean energy together in Gobi Desert and Far East Russia, Korea will construct the interconnection with Russia, China, and Japan. This means to overcome the isolated power grid system, like grid islands. Specifically, the plan shows a robust cooperative relationship by 2019 and to set up SPC by 2020 and to begin construction by 2022. This is the Northeast Asia supergrid concept, what we imagine. We can expect not only joint development and utilization of renewable energy in Northeast Asia, but also the joint strategy for global climate change and environmental pollution. In addition, mutual security and economic community could be achieved by Northeast Asia supergrid. Since the past, there have been many discussions on the power grid interconnection in Northeast Asia. As a result, the representatives from affiliate companies in South Korea, China, and Japan, and Russia gathered in Beijing in March 2016. Finally, they signed a joint MOU to cooperate on the research and planning for the interconnected power grid spanning Northeast Asia. As a pilot project, a joint study on the interconnection between Korea, China, and Japan was conducted. It was organized by GEIDCO. And in September 2017, in East Economic Forum in Vladivostok, President Moon officially proposed the Northeast Asia supergrid. Starting in May 2016, around 50 experts from South Korea, China, and Japan researched for 10 months. We concluded that connecting the three countries by submarine cable and transmitting electricity using HVDC technology. The result of the study is economically feasible and technically possible. As the first fruits of these efforts, at the summit meeting between Korea and China in December in 2017, we have concluded MOU on cooperation for the power grid interconnection between Korea and China in both governments and companies respectively. We organized the joint working group and kicked off it in April. KEPCO and SGCC finished the joint study last year. We confirmed that the interconnection is feasible and possible even if the line is alone. And currently, we prepared the joint project agreement and applied it to both governments. KEPCO and SoftBank have been working together and conducted desktop marine survey until March this year. At the last year's summit meeting between Korea and Russia, both countries signed an MOU between the governments and the companies, respectively. KEPCO and Rosetti organized the joint working group and kicked off it last year. Moreover, at Korea-Russia Resource Cooperative Committee in September this year, both governments agreed to expand the joint working group. The following is the description of the relationship between energy transition and interconnection. This is a graph about the variable list of renewable energy generation in a single day. At 13 o'clock, the solar power generation is maximized, and there is little solar power during the night. So the backup power source shall cover the difference. According to the IEA, the impact of renewable energy on the grid can be divided into 4 stages. If renewable energy generation is more than 15%, it's difficult to maintain the supply-demand balance. And if it is more than 30%, stability of the grid will be reduced. Korea and Japan are expected to enter the phase 3 before 2030. Here is how to enhance flexibility and stability of the grid. Europe and North America have power grids associated with their neighbors, and they can accommodate relatively more renewable energy. For example, in Denmark, 48% of energy was generated by wind power in 2017. And they are expanding their grid to the neighboring countries as a way to respond to the variabilities of the generation. In Japan, in some areas such as Shikoku, renewable energy generation covers a large portion of electricity demand. As I know, there are some places where renewable power generation is more than regional demand at certain time slot. The interconnection between countries will provide a pathway for this extra renewable energy to be exchanged elsewhere. The interconnection between countries is not an easy work. We have to consider business model and regulatory framework and taxation and power trading mechanism, and so on. But that's not something that can be done, as they have been done in Europe, in North America, and in many countries around the world, except Northeast Asia. If we make cooperation and consensus, we can make feasible and bankable model and pursue the energy transition more effectively. ありがとうございます. Thank you.